And we was laying there, and we kept hearing somebody walk upstairs. So Mom gets up, and she goes and shuts the door that leads upstairs, and she locks it. And I'm laying there, and we look up, and it's like a hand stuck to that tape, just pushed it down, just looked right down on me. And we could make out a face. And the tape just sucked back up to the ceiling.
Nobody couldn't go through that graveyard at night. You know, it was so spooky and hanging. And everybody go through that graveyard, he'll say, I'm cold lying here. I'm cold lying here. And a drunk man went through the graveyard one night and he said, they heard that ghost saying, I'm cold lying here. He said, I don't want you cold, you know, keep all the dirt off.
O'Neill Rourke had a cow that give milk, and there was a cat would run around that cow, and he come in and he said, I'm going to get the gun and go out there and kill that cat that's around that cow. Said that cow's going dry. I said it must be a witch. My Uncle Crap Rourke, the Het Simpson was a witch and turned him into a horse and rode him all night like a horse, and when the witch come off of him, his hands was full of chestnut burrs. Them's true stories, I reckon.
They was having church, and it was just about the nick of time that integration was fixing to enter the door. And there was a man lived over in Virginia, and he got saved. And the ratio that lines in was hard drawed against the black and the white. And they didn't have too much to do with white, color. The white and the color didn't have too much to do with each other. So he got saved. And he told the Lord, he said, Lord, I'll do anything that you want me to do. Anything. Well, you can tell God that. And when you tell him that, he'll give you some time. So, he waited about 2 years before he tested him. And then one night in Virginia, it was the coldest night that ever was. And there come a knock at the door. This man knocked on the door. He was the biggest, the blackest man that he ever saw in his life. Said he was so extra big and so extra tall. He looked at him. He said, could I come in to stay all night with you? He looked at him. And in his heart he wanted to say, no, you can't come in. No, no. And he thought, he heard the Lord say, didn't you promise me that you would do anything? He said, yes, Lord, I did. He said, come on in. And he brought him on into his house, because he's wealthy. He wasn't poor, he was a wealthy man. And he set that big black man at the head of his table. And he told him to give, he told his wife to give him anything that he wanted to eat. Give it to him. But when this big black man was at that table, he couldn't get over him being so extra big and so extra black. He prayed. And said when he prayed, the room would get full of angels. And he said, put him in my guest room, the best we got. She put him in the best room they had. But he seen that big black man go up mountain them stairs to go up. And he's still amazed how big and huge he was. He just couldn't get with it. He slept all night. He come down. And overnight, a big snow come. And this man come down the steps. He put that big man right back at the head of that table again. That man would pray and look like the room got full of angels. And then he thanked him for his hospitality. He thanked him for letting him stay there all night. And he shook his hand and said goodbye. He left him, but that snow had fell. This is a real thing. This ain't no hearsay. This was a real thing. He said the real thing. He kept studying. Why was he so big? Why was he so black that he couldn't understand? He never saw a man so huge and tall. He said, I've got to see which way he went. I just got to. He opened the door. He looked at the door. Not a track. He went around the house in the snow with nobody's tracks but his. And he come to this conclusion that he had entertained an angel unaware. That's why he was extra black and dark.
Me and my nephew was out in the front yard one time, and he says, look. And I looked up at my bedroom window, and there was this old woman standing there crying. And she had on a blue dress with little tiny white flowers all over it. And I said, well, we better go see, you know, what's wrong with her. So we go upstairs, we go in my room, supposedly where an old woman had died. And there was no one there. And I said, we don't know where she went to. So we opened the closet, and there was the dress that she had on was hanging there.
Some men had went out one time and stole some potatoes. And they decided to go to the graveyard to count the potatoes, divide the potatoes with each other. So they went out to get these potatoes. We got these potatoes, and one was saying, you take this one, and I'll take that one. You take this one, and I. In the meantime, before we start that, there was 2 potatoes they had dropped at the door, at the gate, was going into the cemetery. And in the meantime, here come 2 men outside the gate. You know, coming by, walking. It must have been way back in olden times, you know. And one said, you take this one, I'll take that one. You take this one, and I'll take that one. They soon got them divided. After they got them divided, then they said, except the 2 at the gate. And the 2 men at the gate thought they was talking about them. And when they said that, they just said, oh, and they started running. So they went back and told everybody, said, God and the devil is up in the graveyard counting our souls.